The notification arrived on a Tuesday afternoon, innocent and bright against my lock screen. It was a group text from my mother, Elaine, titled Family Gratitude Trip, attached to a screenshot of first-class flight confirmations. Maui for all the grandkids, she wrote, followed by a string of heart emojis. I smiled reflexively, scrolling through the list of 7 names, until the cold reality hit me. There were supposed to be 8. My daughter, Nora, was the only one missing. The rain in Oregon does not wash things away. It presses them down. It pushes the gray into the pavement and the green into the moss, creating a heavy, permanent saturation that feels less like weather and more like an atmosphere of containment. That was how I felt on the Tuesday the text message arrived. I was contained. I was managing. I was 32 years old, divorced for 11 months, and standing in the aisle of a grocery store debating the price difference between organic and conventional strawberries. My phone buzzed against the palm of my hand. It was a sharp, insistent vibration that cut through the low hum of the refrigerator cases. I looked down. It was a notification from the group chat titled Butler Family News. My mother, Elaine, had changed the icon to a palm tree. I slid my thumb across the screen. The message was a block of cheerful text followed by a series of high-resolution images. So excited to finally share this surprise. Grandparents. Gratitude trip is officially booked. Below the caption, there was a screenshot of a reservation confirmation for a private villa in Maui. 7 bedrooms, oceanfront, a pool that looked like a slice of turquoise glass dropping into the Pacific. Following that was a list of flight confirmations. First class. The dates were for the 2nd week of July. Maui for all the grandkids. My mother had written, "Get your calendars ready." I smiled. It was a reflex, a muscle memory from a childhood where my parents were the benevolent architects of our happiness. I felt a surge of genuine warmth, a trip, a family trip. Nora would love the ocean. She had been asking to see a real sea turtle since she watched a documentary about them 3 weeks ago. I tapped on the image of the flight manifest to zoom in. I wanted to see the seat assignments. I wanted to see if Nora was sitting next to her favorite cousin, Leo. I scanned the names listed in bold. Black type. There was Leo. There was distinct text for my brother Chase's 2 boys. There were the names of my sister's 3 girls. I read the list again, moving my lips slightly as I counted. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I frowned. There were 7 grandchildren in the Butler family. I scrolled down, thinking perhaps the screenshot had cut off the bottom of the list. I tapped the image to expand it fully. I turned my phone sideways. Leo, Mason, Ethan, Sarah, Emily, Grace. The list ended. I stood there in the produce section, holding a plastic container of strawberries that suddenly felt incredibly heavy. I read the names a 3rd time. I read the confirmation numbers. I read the dates. Nora was not there. My first thought was not anger. It was a frantic, helpful confusion. Mom had made a mistake. She had forgotten to add Nora to the booking agent's list. It was a clerical error. It was a typo. My mother was precise. Yes, but everyone made mistakes. Maybe the travel agent had dropped a line. I tapped out a reply immediately. Mom, I think the agent missed Nora on the flight list. Just wanted to flag it before prices go up. I watched the 3 little dots dance on the screen. They appeared, vanished, and appeared again. I waited. The air in the store felt cold. The dots stopped. No reply came. Instead, a separate message popped up at the top of my screen. It was not from the group chat. It was from Chloe, my younger brother Chase's wife. Ruby, are you somewhere private? My stomach turned over. It was a physical sensation, like the drop of an elevator. I abandoned the cart right there next to the bananas and walked quickly toward the exit. I needed air. I needed to not be surrounded by strangers. I am in the car. I typed back, though I was only just walking through the sliding glass doors into the parking lot rain. Call me. Chloe wrote. I dialed her number. She answered on the first ring. Ruby, she said. Her voice was low, hushed. I could hear the background noise of her own house, the sound of cartoons playing on a television. "Did you see the text?" "I saw it." I said, "They forgot Nora. I just texted Mom." There was a pause on the line. It was a thick, heavy silence that told me everything I did not want to know. "Ruby," Chloe said, and her voice sounded pained. "It wasn't a mistake. Chase told me about it last night. I told him he had to call you, but he said Mom forbade anyone from spoiling the surprise until the announcement went out." "I don't understand," I said. My voice sounded thin, tinny in my own ears. I unlocked my car and sat in the driver's seat, the sound of the rain drumming against the metal roof. "What do you mean it wasn't a mistake?" "It is a trip for the grandkids. Nora is a grandchild." "I know," Chloe said. "I know. I fought with Chase about it for an hour. But apparently, Elaine has been planning this for months. She told Chase and the others that the trip was specific." "Specific to what?" I asked. "I don't know the exact words," Chloe said. "But she made it sound like there were conditions. I just wanted you to know before you went to Sunday dinner. I didn't want you walking in there blind." "Conditions," I repeated. "I am so sorry." "Ruby," Chloe said, "if it were up to me, we wouldn't go. But Chase says we can't say no to Martin." I stared through the windshield. The wipers were off, and the world was a blur of gray and green water. "Thanks for telling me." "Chloe," I said. I hung up. I sat there for 20 minutes. I did not cry. I felt a strange, freezing sensation spreading from my chest out to my fingertips. My mother had booked a villa in Hawaii for 6 of her grandchildren and publicly announced it to the 7th, leaving her behind, and she expected us all to come to dinner on Sunday. The house in Alder Creek was a monument to stability. That was how my father, Martin, liked to describe it. It was a sprawling colonial revival with white shutters and a lawn that was manicured to within an inch of its life. It was the house I had grown up in, the house where we had taken Christmas photos in matching sweaters, the house where nothing bad was ever supposed to happen. I pulled into the driveway at 5 o'clock on Sunday. The rain had stopped, leaving the air scrubbed clean and smelling of wet cedar. My brother Chase's SUV was already there. My sister's minivan was parked next to it. I looked in the rearview mirror. Nora was in the back seat, listening to an audiobook on her tablet. She was 7 years old. She had my dark hair and her father's serious, contemplative eyes. She did not know about the text. She did not know about Maui. "Ready for Grandma's famous roast chicken?" I asked, forcing a brightness into my voice that tasted like metal. "Yes," Nora said. "Can I show Grandpa my drawing?" "Of course," I said. Walking into the house felt like walking onto a stage where everyone else had seen the script but me. The smell of roasting herbs and lemon furniture polish hit me instantly. It was the scent of my childhood. My mother was in the kitchen. Elaine Butler was 65, trim, and terrifyingly put together. She wore a cashmere sweater the color of oatmeal and pearl earrings. She was tossing a salad with wooden spoons. "Ruby," she said, looking up. Her smile was perfect. It did not waver. "You are right on time." She did not mention the text. She did not mention the trip. I looked around the room. Chase was by the refrigerator, holding a beer. He looked at the floor when I entered. Chloe gave me a tight, sympathetic grimace from across the island. My father, Martin, was carving the chicken at the sideboard. He was a large man who took up space with a quiet, imposing gravity. "Hi, Dad," I said. "Ruby," he said. He did not turn around. He focused on the knife, slicing through the meat with surgical precision. We moved to the dining room. The table was set with the good china, the blue and white pattern that we were only allowed to use on special occasions. We took our assigned seats. I sat between Chase and my sister, heavy silence hanging between us like a curtain. Nora sat across from me, next to Leo. She was chatting happily about school, about her drawing, completely unaware of the invisible line that had been drawn down the center of the table. We ate. The chicken was perfect. The wine was expensive. The conversation was excruciatingly normal. They talked about the weather. They talked about the local school board election. They talked about Martin's golf game. I waited. I cut my food into tiny pieces. I took small sips of water. I waited for someone to say the word Hawaii. It happened when the plates were being cleared. Elaine dabbed her mouth with a linen napkin and placed it on the table. "I am so glad everyone received the itinerary," she said. Her voice was light, conversational. It was quite a feat to coordinate the villa dates with the flight availability. The table went still. Chase took a long drink of his beer. I put my fork down. The clatter sounded like a gunshot in the quiet room. "Mom," I said. I kept my voice level. I had practiced this in the car. I saw the itinerary. Nora was not on it. Elaine looked at me. Her expression was one of mild, polite confusion, as if I had asked why the sky was blue. "Yes," she said. "That is correct." She did not elaborate. She just sat there, hands folded on the table, waiting for me to accept this fact. "Why?" I asked. Elaine sighed. It was a small, delicate sound. She looked around the table, gathering the attention of the room. "Your father and I have been doing a lot of thinking." She said, "We wanted to do something special for the families. A reward." "A reward?" I repeated. "Yes," Elaine said. She looked directly at me then. Her eyes were cool, blue, and unblinking. "It is a reward for households that keep stable routines, for parents who prioritize structure." The air left the room. "Stable routines," I said. I could feel the blood rushing in my ears. "Mom, I am divorced. I am not unstable. I am a single mother working full-time. Divorce is chaos." "Ruby," Elaine said softly. "We all know how difficult the last year has been. The back and forth, the schedule changes, the apartment living. It is not the environment we are celebrating with this trip. We wanted to honor the families that have maintained continuity." I looked at my father. "Dad?" I said. Martin Butler looked up from his plate. He looked at me, and then his eyes slid away. He looked at the centerpiece of white hydrangeas. He looked at the wall. He picked up his wine glass and took a sip. He said nothing. It was a silence I knew. It was the silence that had endorsed 1,000 small cruelties over the years. It was the silence that said Elaine was the voice of the family, and Martin was merely its wall. I looked at Nora. She had stopped eating. She was looking back and forth between us, sensing the shift in tone, sensing the danger. "Is it because of me?" Nora asked. Her voice was very small. Elaine smiled at her. It was a benevolent, grandmotherly smile. "Oh, honey. No, this is grown-up business. It is just a special trip for the cousins who have had a very calm year." The cruelty of it took my breath away. It was so precise. It framed exclusion as a moral failing of the excluded. I stood up. My chair scraped loudly against the hardwood floor. "We are leaving," I said. "Ruby," my sister started. "Don't make a scene." "I am not making a scene," I said. My hands were shaking, and I clenched them into fists at my sides. "I am removing my daughter from a table where she is being told she is worth less than her cousins because her parents aren't married anymore." "It is not about worth," Elaine said calmly. "It is about standards. Come on." "Nora," I said. I did not look at my mother. I did not look at my father, who was still studying the hydrangeas as if they held the secrets of the universe. I walked around the table and took Nora's hand, but I didn't finish my cake. Nora whispered, "We will get cake on the way home." I said, "We are leaving. Now." We walked out of the dining room, through the pristine hallway, and out the front door. I did not stop until we were in the car with the doors locked. I started the engine. I backed out of the driveway without looking at the house. I drove for 2 miles in total silence before I pulled over into the empty parking lot of a closed garden center. I turned off the car. The darkness settled around us. "Mom?" Nora asked from the back seat. I turned around. Her face was a pale oval in the shadows. She was not crying. That was almost worse. She was thinking, "Did I do something wrong?" She asked. "Is that why Grandma is taking the others and not me? Because I was bad at school?" My heart broke. It shattered into a million jagged pieces right there in the front seat of my Honda. No, I said. I unbuckled my seatbelt and reached back to squeeze her hand. No, Nora, you did absolutely nothing wrong. You are perfect. You are wonderful. This has nothing to do with you. But she said it was a reward. Nora said, rewards are for being good. Grandma is confused. I said, I lied. She is confused about what a reward means. You are good. I promise you. I drove us home. I got Nora into her pajamas. I read her 3 chapters of her book until she fell asleep. Then I went into the kitchen, poured myself a glass of wine, and sat in the dark. I did not know what to do. The humiliation was a physical weight on my chest. They were going to Hawaii. They were going to post pictures. Everyone would see. The neighbors, the extended family. Nora's friends at school would see the cousins' posts. I picked up my phone and called Tessa. Tessa Nolan had been my best friend since college. She was a lawyer, sharp-edged and fiercely loyal. She answered on the second ring. Tell me, she said. I told her. I told her about the text, the dinner, the speech about stable routines, the silence of my father. When I finished, Tessa was quiet for a long moment. Ruby, she said, you need to write this down. Write what down? I asked. I lived it. I'm not going to forget it. No, Tessa said. I mean document it. Date, time, direct quotes. Save the text messages. Screenshot the itinerary. Write down exactly what your mother said at the table. Why? I asked. I'm not suing them. Tessa, they can invite who they want to Hawaii. It's their money. This isn't about the trip. Tessa said. This is a power move. Public humiliation is a tool. If they are willing to do this to Nora openly, they are doing it for a reason. They are establishing a narrative. They are saying you are the failure. And Nora is the collateral damage. A narrative? I asked. Yes, Tessa said. And if you don't have a record of what really happened, they will gaslight you into believing you deserved it. Or worse, they will make the rest of the family believe it. Humiliation is social leverage. Ruby, you need to protect yourself. I hung up with Tessa and opened my laptop. I started a document. I typed the date. I typed the words. Sunday dinner. Elaine says the trip is a reward for stable routines. Seeing it on the screen made it look different. It looked colder. It looked calculated. I sat there for a long time, staring at the cursor, blinking. I needed to understand. Was this new? Was this just because of the divorce? I thought of my cousin Dana. Dana Pierce was 10 years older than me. She was my father's sister's daughter. She had distanced herself from the family years ago, moving to Seattle and rarely showing up for holidays. I found her number in my contacts. It was late, almost 10 o'clock, but I pressed call. Ruby? Dana answered. She sounded surprised. Hi? Dana? I said. I know it's late. I'm sorry. Is everything okay? She asked. Not really. I said, my parents just announced a trip to Hawaii for all the grandkids except Nora. Dana let out a short, bitter laugh. Ah, she said, the reward trip. I wondered when they would pull that card on your generation. Wait, I said, what do you mean? Pull that card? Has this happened before? Ruby, Dana said. Why do you think I stopped coming to Christmas? In '98, when I was in grad school and broke, Elaine offered to pay off my student loans if I broke up with my boyfriend, the one she didn't like, the musician. You're kidding. I said no. Dana said, so the next year, she took the cousins to Aspen, all of them except me. She told the family it was a celebration of good choices. I felt a chill run down my spine. Good choices, I whispered. She called this one a reward for stable routines. It is the same playbook, Dana said. They use money and access to enforce compliance. If you step out of line, if you get divorced, if you choose the wrong career, if you don't visit enough, they cut you out of the rewards. It keeps everyone else in line. Your siblings are terrified of being next. Ruby, that's why they didn't speak up. Martin didn't say a word. I said, Martin never says a word. Dana said, that is his job. He is the silent enforcer. He lets her do the dirty work so he can remain the nice one, but he signs the checks. Ruby. Never forget that. I thanked Dana and hung up. The house felt too quiet. I looked at the document on my screen. Tessa was right. Dana was right. This was a system. I felt a sudden, sharp clarity. I was not going to beg. I was not going to apologize for my divorce. I was not going to plead for Nora to be included in a trip where she was clearly unwanted. But I was not going to let it slide into the murky waters of family misunderstanding. I opened my email. I typed my mother's address in the recipient field. Mom, I wrote, I am writing to clarify the conversation from tonight. You stated that the Hawaii trip for the grandchildren excludes Nora because my household does not meet your standard of stable routines following my divorce. I am asking you to confirm in writing that this is the reason Nora is being excluded. Ruby. I hit send. I did not expect a reply until morning. But 10 minutes later, my phone pinged. Ruby, there is no need to be dramatic. This is about standards, not punishment. We are simply investing in the environments that align with our values. We hope that in time, your situation will settle enough to merit similar opportunities. Elaine. I stared at the words, investing in the environments, merit similar opportunities. It was corporate language applied to a 7-year-old girl. It was colder than if she had simply said she hated me. It was a transaction. I was about to close my laptop when another email arrived. It was from my father. The subject line was, FW, Hawaii Logistics/reimbursement. I frowned. My father often struggled with email chains, frequently hitting reply all or forwarding things to the wrong people. I opened it. It looked like a forwarded conversation between Martin and their financial planner, a man named Greg. Martin. The email from Greg read, I have adjusted the withdrawal for the Maui villa as requested. I've also updated the tracking sheet. Do you want this tagged under the general gift exemption or the legacy reimbursement list as discussed? The latter will require the usual adjustment to the back-end percentages. Above that, my father had typed a message intended, I assumed, for my mother, Elaine, confirm the tag. If we put it under the reimbursement list, we need to make sure the tracking is updated for Ruby's share so there is no confusion later. He had sent it to Ruby instead of replying to the thread. I froze. Legacy reimbursement list. I had never heard that phrase before. Adjustment to the back-end percentages. Ruby's share. I read it again. The trip wasn't just a reward. It wasn't just a cruel social game. They were paying for it out of money that was somehow tied to me. They were tracking it. The exclusion wasn't just about parenting. It was about money. And they had a list. I sat back in the dark, the light of the screen illuminating the room. I felt the tears finally come, hot and angry. I was not sad anymore. I was terrified, and I was furious. I looked at the email again. Legacy reimbursement list. I did not know what it was, but I was going to find out. I saved the email, I printed it, and then I started a new folder on my desktop named The List. The rain started again outside, tapping against the window like 1,000 tiny fingers trying to get in. I listened to it, and for the first time in a year, I did not feel helpless. I felt like a hunter. You want to talk about standards? Mom? I thought, let's talk about standards. I closed the laptop. The screen went black. The game had changed, and I was finally paying attention. The phrase legacy reimbursement list sat in my mind like a stone in a shoe. It was sharp, intrusive, and impossible to ignore. I spent the morning after the dinner sitting at my kitchen table, watching the gray Oregon light filter through the sliding glass door. While my laptop hummed in front of me, I had called in sick to work. I could not focus on spreadsheets for a marketing firm when my own family had apparently turned my life into a ledger. I needed to know what it was. The email from my father had been accidental, a slip of the digital tongue, but it implied a system. Systems leave trails. I remembered then that 2 years ago, when my father was complaining about losing files on his computer, I had set up a cloud storage account for Butler Restoration Group, I had linked it to his personal email so he could access family photos and business contracts in one place. I was the dutiful daughter then. The tech support, the problem solver. I had created the password. I had never logged out on my browser. I opened a new tab. I typed in the cloud service address. My breath hitched as the autofill populated the username. Martin Butler, Restoration. The password field was dots. Masked, but remembered. I clicked Sign In. The screen loaded. Folders appeared. Project Invoices 2024. Tax Returns. Grandkids Photos. And there, buried inside a subfolder labeled Estate Planning, was a spreadsheet file titled LRL_master_tracking_V4. Legacy Reimbursement List. My hand trembled as I double-clicked it. The spreadsheet opened. It was a grid of terrifying precision. The columns were labeled with our names: Chase, Ruby, Dana, though Dana's column was grayed out, and Sarah. Down the left side were dates, going back nearly 15 years. I scrolled to my name. I felt a wave of nausea that started in my stomach and rose to my throat. Every birthday check I had ever received was listed. Every Christmas gift was assigned a dollar value, but those were not the entries that made the room spin. It was the debts column. June 2024. Deposit for apartment, $2,500. Status, outstanding loan. I stared at the screen. I remembered that day. I had been crying in my parents' living room, terrified of leaving my husband, terrified of not being able to afford a safe place for Nora. My mother had handed me a check. She had held my face in her hands. She had said, "This is what mothers are for. Ruby, a safety net. You do not worry about this. You just get safe." She had called it a safety net. The spreadsheet called it a loan. I scrolled down. October 2023. Emergency car repair. $400. Status, unreconciled. That was my birthday present. My transmission had died 2 weeks before my birthday. Dad had fixed it at his shop. He had told me, "Happy birthday, kiddo. Drive safe." It was listed as a debt. There were notes in the far right column, written in my mother's terse, distinct voice. Next to the apartment deposit, she had written, "Result of poor marital management, high-risk investment, next to the car repair, enablement of chaotic scheduling." I felt violated. It was not just about the money, it was the rewriting of history. Moments I had treasured as evidence of their love, moments where I thought, they have my back, they see me struggle and they are helping me, were actually transactions. They were keeping score, and I was losing a game I did not know I was playing. I closed the laptop. I could not look at it anymore. I felt dirty. I took a shower, scrubbing my skin until it was red, but the feeling of exposure remained. They had monetized my vulnerability. I dressed in a blazer and jeans. I needed to see him. I needed to look him in the eye. Butler Restoration Group was located in a renovated warehouse on the edge of town. Near the river, it smelled of sawdust, varnish, and old money. My father, Martin Butler, had built the business from a single truck into the premier restoration firm in the county. He fixed old things. He made rot look like antique charm. I walked past the receptionist, a woman named Carol, who had known me since I was 5. "Hi. Ruby," she chirped. "Your dad is in the back office." "Thanks." "Carol," I said. I did not stop. I knocked once on the heavy oak door and pushed it open. Martin was sitting behind his desk, reviewing a set of blueprints. He looked up, his reading glasses perched on the end of his nose. He looked like exactly what he was, a pillar of the community, a good man. "Ruby," he said. He took off his glasses. He did not look surprised, but he looked tired. The lines around his eyes seemed deeper than they had on Sunday. "I figured you might come by." I walked to the chair opposite his desk and sat down. I did not smile. I saw the email. "Dad," I said. Martin sighed. He rubbed a hand over his face, the sound of his rough palm against his stubble filling the quiet room. "I know. I am sorry you saw that. It was clumsy of me." "Clumsy?" I asked. You have a ledger. Dad, you have a spreadsheet where you track birthday presents as debts. You listed the money for my apartment as a loan. Mom told me that was a gift. She told me it was help. Martin leaned back in his chair. The leather creaked. It is help, Ruby, but it is also estate planning. You have to understand. When there are multiple children, things get complicated. If we give $5,000 to you for a crisis, and nothing to Chase, that creates an imbalance in the eventual inheritance. We have to track it to keep it fair. Fair? I asked. You call it fair to grade my divorce? I saw the notes. Dad. Poor marital management. Is that an accounting term? Martin winced. He looked at the window, avoiding my gaze. Your mother. She likes to be thorough. She wants to understand the why behind the expenses. It helps her feel in control of the family trajectory. She is not a bank manager. I said, she is a mother, and you are a father. You told me that car repair was a birthday present. It was, Martin said, his voice pleading slightly. In spirit, it was, but on paper, for the trust. We have to reconcile the value. It is just math. Ruby, it is not personal. It feels pretty personal to be excluded from a family trip because my account is in the red. I said, is that why Nora isn't going? Because I cost too much this year? Martin shifted. He picked up a pen and turned it over in his fingers. The trip is separate. The trip is about the compliance memo. The words slipped out before he could stop them. He froze. The pen stopped moving. The what? I asked. Nothing, Martin said quickly. Just internal planning. You said compliance memo. I leaned forward. What is a compliance memo? Dad? That sounds like something you write for an employee who is about to be fired. Martin looked cornered. He was a big man, broad-shouldered and capable, but in that moment, he looked small. He looked like a man who had spent 40 years shrinking to fit inside a box his wife had built. It is a document, he said, his voice low. Elaine wrote it. It outlines the expectations for the beneficiaries of the trust. It covers public behavior, social standing, financial independence, the trip. The trip is a bonus for those who met the metrics of the memo this quarter. I stared at him. The air in the office felt thick, choking. Metrics? I whispered. You have metrics for your children? It is not like that, Martin insisted. But his voice lacked conviction. We just want you all to be successful. We want to encourage the right choices. It is a strategy. Ruby, to protect the family name, to protect the business. You are managing her image, I said. The realization hit me with the force of a physical blow. That is what this is. You aren't managing finances. You are managing her ego. You are the enforcer for her PR campaign. Martin slammed his hand on the desk. It was a rare display of temper. I'm trying to keep this family from tearing itself apart over money when we are gone, he shouted. I am trying to keep the peace. Do you think this is easy for me? Do you think I like seeing your name on that list with those notes? Then take it off. I said, delete the list. Tell her no. Martin slumped. The anger vanished as quickly as it had come, replaced by a profound, pathetic resignation. I can't, he said. She manages the trust structure. I handle the restoration work. She handles the legacy. Legacy. I spat the word out. If this is your legacy, Dad, I don't want it. I stood up. I walked to the door. Ruby, Martin called after me. Don't do anything rash. Chase understands the system. Talk to him. I walked out. I did not slam the door. I closed it very, very quietly. I did not talk to Chase. I did not have to. Chase was doing plenty of talking on his own. When I picked up Nora from school that afternoon, the atmosphere was brittle. Usually, the other mothers would wave or chat while we waited for the bell. Today, they huddled in small groups, glancing at me and then looking away. I saw Becky, the mother of Nora's best friend, pretending to check her messages. Hey, Becky, I said, forcing a smile. Becky looked up, startled. Oh, hi, Ruby. I have to run." She turned and walked quickly toward the parking lot, dragging her son by the hand. I frowned. I checked my phone. I opened the social media app I rarely used. There it was, 3 hours ago. Chase had posted a long status update. It was a photo of him and Chloe holding cocktails, with a caption that read, "So grateful for parents who teach us the value of hard work and earned privileges. In a world where everyone wants a participation trophy, I am proud to belong to a family that rewards stability, loyalty, and good choices. Hawaii bound. Blessed family values earned, not given." The comments section was full of praise from our neighbors and church members. "Amen," wrote Mrs. Higgins. "Love this perspective," wrote the pastor's wife, but the subtext was screaming, "Earned privileges, participation trophy." He was publicly validating Elaine's narrative. He was telling the entire town of Alder Creek that if Ruby wasn't going, it was because Ruby hadn't earned it. He was calling his sister a failure to justify his free vacation. I looked down at Nora. She was walking toward me, her backpack dragging in the dirt. She looked small. She looked defeated. "Mom," she said as she climbed into the car. "Ethan said he can't come over for a play date on Saturday." Ethan was Chase's son. "Did he say why?" I asked, my voice tight. "He said his dad told him we are in a timeout." Nora said, "Are we in a timeout, Mom?" I gripped the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. A timeout. Chase had told his children that his aunt and cousin were being punished. I wanted to scream. I wanted to drive to Chase's house and tear down his picket fence. I wanted to go online and post the spreadsheet, the notes, the truth about the loans. I wanted to burn it all down. But I looked at Nora in the rearview mirror. She was picking at a loose thread on her sleeve, looking for reassurance. If I exploded now, if I started a public war, Nora would be the one caught in the crossfire. The gossip would get worse. The exclusion would become a permanent rift. "No, sweetie," I said, "we are not in a timeout. Uncle Chase is just confused. We are going to have our own weekend." I chose restraint. It tasted like ash in my mouth. That evening, I called Dr. Aris. I had not seen her since the finalization of my divorce, but I needed her now. She fit me in for a video session at 8 o'clock. "I want to hurt them," I told her. I was sitting on my bedroom floor, the laptop balanced on a stack of books. "I want to expose them, but I can't, Doctor." Aris nodded. She was a calm woman with gray braids and eyes that saw everything. "Why can't you?" "Because of Nora," I said, "and because if I react the way they expect me to, I prove them right. My mother called me chaotic. If I scream, I am chaotic. If I fight, I am unstable. So they have set a trap." "Doctor," Aris said, "if you defend yourself, you validate their accusation." "Exactly," I said. "So what do I do? How do I fight a war where the only weapon allowed is silence?" "You don't fight with silence, Doctor," Aris said. "You fight with boundaries. You stop trying to convince them you are good, and you start deciding what you will tolerate. You prepare a response." "Ruby, not a reaction, a response," I repeated. "One conversation," she suggested, calm, scripted, where you state what you know and what you will do, not asking for permission, just informing them of reality. I spent the next 2 nights with Tessa. We turned my living room into a war room. Tessa was terrifyingly efficient. She was not emotional about it. She was forensic. We printed out every email from my mother over the last 5 years. We transcribed voicemails I had saved. "Look at this," Tessa said, highlighting a paragraph in an email from Christmas 3 years ago. "I am so pleased you decided to host the brunch." Elaine had written, "It shows a real commitment to the group. I have transferred a little extra into your account as a thank you." "And this one?" Tessa said, pulling up a text from when I missed Father's Day because Nora had the flu. "Disappointed you couldn't make the effort. We will have to rethink the distribution of the season tickets this year. It is a pattern," Tessa said. "She frames emotional loyalty as moral worth. If you do what she wants, you are good. If you are good, you get money. But the moment you have a need, like the divorce, that inconveniences her image, you are bad, and bad people get debts. It is operant conditioning. I said, feeling sick. She is training us like dogs, and Chase is the best in show. Tessa muttered. Wait, I said. I was looking at the spreadsheet printout again. Why is my section disputed? Look at the bottom of my column. It says, status, verification pending. Tessa looked. I don't know. Did you refuse to sign something? I thought about it. I couldn't remember signing anything other than birthday cards. I called Dana again. Dana, I said, putting her on speaker, what is a verification pending status on the list? Dana sighed. Oh, the acknowledgement letters. The what? A few years ago? Dana said, Elaine got paranoid about gift taxes. She drafted these letters for us to sign. Basically, they said that any large sum of money we received was a familial advance subject to recall, not a gift. It was a way to dodge the IRS if she ever got audited, I think, or just another way to hold the purse strings. I never signed a letter like that. I said, I know. Dana said, I didn't either. That is why I am grayed out on the list. But Chase signed his, Sarah signed hers. Why didn't I sign it? I asked. I don't even remember seeing it. You were in the hospital, Dana said quietly. It was 5 years ago, when you had the miscarriage. Before Nora. The air left my lungs. I remembered that time as a blur of grief and physical pain. I remembered my mother visiting, bringing flowers, talking about how everything happens for a reason. She tried to give it to you then? I asked. Martin stopped her. Dana said, I heard them arguing in the hallway. He said, Not now. Elaine, she is grieving. She never gave it to you, but I guess she marked you as pending ever since. I hung up the phone. My hands were shaking. She had wanted me to sign a financial liability waiver while I was losing a baby, and because I hadn't, because my tragedy had inconvenienced her paperwork. My standing was unverified. It was 11:30 at night. Tessa had gone home. The house was quiet. My phone buzzed on the coffee table. I looked at the screen. Dad. I did not answer. I could not speak to him. I let it go to voicemail. A moment later, the notification appeared. New voicemail. I pressed play. Martin's voice filled the room. He sounded different. He sounded like he had been drinking, or crying, or both. Ruby, he said, I am sitting here looking at the files. I just wanted to say, don't push too hard on the list. Just let it go. Please. There was a pause. I heard the sound of paper shuffling. There is something else, he said, his voice dropping to a whisper. Something from before you had Nora. You were never told. If you keep digging, she is going to bring it up. And I don't want you to be hurt by that. Dad? I said to the empty room. Just leave it alone, he said, for your own sake. The line went dead. I sat there in the silence, the voicemail ending with a soft click. Something from before you had Nora. I looked at the spreadsheet. I looked at the dates. I looked at the gap in the records 5 years ago. I was not going to leave it alone. I was going to find out what they had buried, and then I was going to use it to break them. The Hawthorne Community Center was a low brick building that smelled of floor wax and stale coffee. It was neutral ground. That was why I had chosen it. I could not go back to the house in Alder Creek, where the very architecture seemed designed to make me feel small. And I would not invite them into my apartment, which they already viewed as a symbol of my failure. I arrived 40 minutes early. I arranged the chairs in a circle. I placed a pitcher of water in the center. I sat down and opened my binder. Inside, I had arranged the evidence. I had the screenshots of the group text. I had the email from Martin. I had the printout of the legacy reimbursement list with its rows of debts and judgments. I had the metadata logs. Tessa had helped me compile. I was not here to scream. I was not here to cry. Doctor, Aris had told me that anger was a form of engagement. And engagement was what Elaine wanted. She wanted a reaction she could label as hysterical. She wanted me to prove her right, so I prepared to be boring. I prepared to be a wall of facts. My cousin Dana had flown in from Seattle that morning. She sat next to me now, wearing a sharp gray blazer and looking at the door with a grim expression. She had not been in the same room as my parents for 6 years. "Are you sure you want to do this?" Dana asked. "They are going to spin it. That is what they do. Let them spin," I said. My voice was steady, though my hands were cold. "I have the paper. At 2 o'clock exactly." The door opened. Elaine walked in first. She looked immaculate. She was wearing a soft blue cardigan and linen trousers, the kind of outfit that suggested a breezy, effortless afternoon. She carried a canvas tote bag. She looked like she was arriving for a book club, not a confrontation about the emotional abuse of her grandchildren. Martin followed her. He looked older than he had in his office. His shoulders were hunched, and he carried a leather portfolio case like a shield. Chase came last. He looked like a teenager who had been called to the principal's office. He wore sunglasses which he took off as he entered, revealing eyes that looked darting and nervous. "Ruby," Elaine said. She smiled. It was a warm, concerned smile. She walked toward me with her arms slightly open, as if to hug me. "You look tired. Honey, have you been sleeping?" I did not stand up. I did not hug her. "Please sit down," I said. Elaine paused. Her smile faltered for a fraction of a second, then reassembled itself into an expression of patient indulgence. "Of course," she said. "It is a little formal, isn't it? But if this helps you feel heard, we are happy to be here." They sat. The silence in the room was thick and granular. I could hear the hum of the vending machine in the hallway. I asked for this meeting. I began. "Because there has been a significant breakdown in communication regarding the Hawaii trip and the family finances. I want to clarify the facts so that we can move forward with a clear understanding of where we stand." Elaine sighed. She reached into her tote bag and pulled out a notebook. "Ruby," she said softly, "I really think you are dramatizing this. I understand that the divorce has left you feeling sensitive. It is natural to feel left out. But this is not a conspiracy. It was a private budget choice." "A budget choice," I repeated. "Yes," Elaine said. "The villa has strict occupancy limits. We had to make difficult decisions. We thought that given your transition this year, a chaotic group trip might be overwhelming for you and Nora. We were trying to protect you." She looked at Martin. "Weren't we?" "Martin?" Martin looked at his hands. "Yes," he mumbled. "Occupancy limits." I opened my binder. I turned to the first tab. "On Tuesday at 4:30 in the afternoon," I said, reading from the page. "You sent a text to the group chat. I have the transcript here. You wrote, 'It is a reward for households that keep stable routines.'" I looked up. "You did not say anything about occupancy limits then. You said it was a reward." Elaine waved a hand dismissively. "That was just shorthand. Ruby, you are parsing words. On Sunday at dinner," I continued, my voice flat. "You said, and I quote, 'It is a reward for parents who prioritize structure.' You then said my home was too chaotic." I turned the page. "On Wednesday morning, in an email response to my request for clarification, you wrote, 'This is about standards, not punishment.'" I placed the paper on the table in the center of the circle. "These are not words about a budget," I said. "These are words about behavior. You are not excluding us because you ran out of money. You are excluding us because you disapprove of my life." Elaine's expression hardened. The benevolent grandmother mask slipped, revealing the steel beneath. "And if we do?" she asked. Her voice was suddenly crisp. "Is it a crime to have standards? Ruby, is it a crime to want to surround ourselves with success? Your brother has built a stable, two-parent home. He has followed the path we laid out. You have blown yours up. Why should the reward be the same?" "So it is a reward," Dana said. She spoke for the first time. Her voice was sharp. "You just admitted it. It is not a budget issue. It is a treat for the dog that sat when you told it to sit." Elaine looked at Dana with icy disdain. "Dana, I am surprised you are here. I would have thought you had moved past your bitterness by now." "I am here as a witness," Dana said, "and you just confirmed everything Ruby said." "It is my money," Elaine snapped. I can spend it how I like. If I want to take the families that are not a source of constant drama, that is my right. It is your right. I agreed. But it is not just about the trip, is it? I turned to the second section of the binder. I pulled out the spreadsheet, the legacy reimbursement list. I slid it across the table toward Martin. Dad, I said, tell us what this is. Martin stared at the paper. He did not touch it. He looked like he wanted to dissolve into the floor. Martin? Elaine said warningly. It is the ledger. Martin whispered. What is the ledger for? I asked. Martin looked at me. His eyes were wet. It tracks the output. Against the estate. Speak up. Dad, I said. I want Chase to hear this. Martin took a breath. It is a plan, he said, his voice trembling, to offset future inheritance shares based on perceived contribution. Every dollar we give you now, loans, gifts, help with the kids, it gets logged, and it gets deducted from your final share of the trust, plus interest. Chase sat up straight. Wait, he said. What? It is an equalization measure, Elaine interjected smoothly, to ensure fairness. It is not fair, Martin burst out. He looked at Elaine, his face flushing red. It is not fair. Elaine, because there are no rules. You change the values. You add penalties. He looked at me. Ruby, the list doesn't just track money. It tracks value. If you do something your mother likes, she adds a credit. If you do something she hates, like the divorce, she adds a multiplier to your debt column. She calls it a risk adjustment. The room went silent. A risk adjustment, I said. So when you gave me that check for my apartment, the one you called a safety net, you were actually debiting my inheritance? Yes, Martin said. And when you paid for Chase's country club membership? I asked. That is listed as a networking investment, Martin said quietly. It is a credit. It adds to his share. Chase looked sick. He looked from Martin to Elaine. Mom? He asked. Is that true? You told me you paid for the club because you were proud of my promotion. I was proud, Elaine said. She did not look at him. She was staring at Martin with a look of pure venom. And it is an investment. You are building the family name. Ruby is dismantling it. So you are paying him to be you, Dana said. And you are charging Ruby for being herself. I am managing the assets, Elaine shouted. It was the first time she had raised her voice. Someone has to. You think this lifestyle just happens? You think the reputation of this family maintains itself? It takes work. It takes discipline. And yes, it takes leverage. Is that why you made Chase post that picture? I asked. I turned to the third tab. I pulled out the screenshot of Chase's Facebook post. Earned privileges. Chase. I said, did you write this? Or did she? Chase looked at the table. He rubbed the back of his neck. She called me. He said softly, after the dinner, she said people in town were talking. She said Mrs. Higgins had seen you storm out and was spreading rumors that you were on drugs or having a breakdown. I was not on drugs. I said, I was protecting my daughter. I know. Chase said. He looked at me, and his eyes were full of shame. But Mom said we had to control the narrative. She sent me the text. She told me exactly what to write. She said if I didn't post it, it would look like the family was fractured, and that would hurt the business. So you threw me to the wolves. I said, to protect the business. I didn't think it would hurt you, Chase said weakly. I thought it would just explain things. It explained that I am a failure, and you are the golden child. I said, and Nora heard about it at school. Her friends aren't allowed to play with her because their parents think we are in a timeout. Chase flinched. I didn't know that. He said, Ruby, I swear, I didn't know about the kids. You didn't ask. I said. Elaine stood up. She smoothed her trousers. This is unproductive, she said. We are going in circles. If you called this meeting to air your grievances, consider them aired, but the facts remain. The trip is booked. The list is an internal estate document that is none of your concern. And frankly, Ruby, this hostility is exactly why you are not coming to Hawaii. She picked up her tote bag. Sit down. Elaine, Dana said. Elaine laughed. Excuse me? Sit down, Dana repeated. Or we show the letter. Elaine froze. She looked at Dana, then at me. For the first time, I saw a flicker of genuine fear in her eyes. I don't know what you are talking about, Elaine said. I think you do. I said. I reached into the back pocket of the binder. I pulled out a single sheet of paper. It was a document I had never seen until Dana found it in the metadata of the cloud drive. This is a draft letter, I said, dated October of last year. It is addressed to the trustees of the Butler Family Trust. That is you and Dad. I began to read. I, Ruby Butler, hereby acknowledge that the sum of $45,000 provided to me over the last decade for housing, vehicle maintenance, and legal fees was not a gift, but a high-interest loan against my future distribution. I agree that in exchange for the forgiveness of the interest on this debt, I waive my right to contest any future discretionary distribution changes made by the trustees. I looked up. It is written in the first person, like I wrote it. So? Elaine said. Her voice was tight. It is a draft. Legal prepares drafts all the time. It is unsigned. I said. I never saw this. You never sent it to me. We decided it wasn't necessary. Elaine said. It was just administrative prep, just in case. In case of what? I asked. In case I fought back? Dana. I said. Dana opened her laptop. She turned it so the screen faced Martin and Chase. I looked at the version history. Dana said, this document wasn't created by a lawyer. It was created by user Elaine Butler, and it wasn't created in October. Dana tapped a key. It was created 3 weeks ago, she said. 2 days before the Hawaii announcement. The room was silent. And look at the comments, Dana said. She pointed to the sidebar of the document on the screen. There, in the margin, was a note written by my mother. Hold until after Hawaii announcement. Leverage trip exclusion to force signature before Q3 tax filing. I looked at my father. He was gray. He was staring at the screen like he was seeing a ghost. You weren't excluding Nora because of my routines. I said. My voice broke, but I kept going. You weren't teaching me a lesson about stability. You timed the trip to hurt me. You wanted me to be so desperate, so humiliated, and so broken that I would sign this letter to get back in your good graces. You wanted me to sign away my rights to the estate. I said, and you were going to use my daughter's tears as the bargaining chip. Elaine stared at me. She did not blink. She did not apologize. She looked annoyed, like a chess player who had lost a pawn she didn't care about. It was a strategy. She said coldly, to protect the assets from your poor judgment, if you had just accepted your place, Ruby, none of this would have been necessary. But you always have to make it difficult. My place? I asked. Your place is to be grateful. Elaine hissed. We gave you everything, and you threw it away on a marriage that failed and a career that goes nowhere. You are a liability, and I will not let you drag the rest of us down. Chase stood up. He looked like he was going to be sick. Mom, he said. Stop. Sit down. Chase, Elaine snapped. No, Chase said. You said it was about standards. You didn't say you were trying to blackmail her. It is not blackmail, Elaine shouted. It is leverage. That is how the world works. Not my world, I said. I closed the binder. The snap of the rings was loud in the room. I am done, I said. I stood up. I looked at Martin, who was still staring at the floor. I looked at Chase, who was pale and shaking. I looked at Elaine, who stood defiant and terrible in her cashmere. Here is what is going to happen, I said. I was channeling Dr. Aris. I was channeling every ounce of strength I had left. For the next 30 days, I am instituting a no-contact period. Do not call me. Do not text me. Do not email me unless it is a life-or-death emergency regarding a medical issue. I took a breath. You are not to contact Nora. I said, you are not to pick her up from school. You are not to send her letters. You are not to speak to her. You can't do that, Elaine said. She is my granddaughter. I said, and I am. If you show up at her school, I will call the police. If you send her a package, I will return it unopened. If you try to route a message through Chase or anyone else, I will extend the no-contact period by another month. Ruby, Martin said. He looked up. His eyes were red. Please. No, Dad. I said, you sat there. You knew about the letter. You knew about the plan. You let her do it. You are just as guilty. I wanted to protect you, Martin whispered. You protected your comfort. I said, not me. I picked up the binder. After 30 days, I said, I will send you an email. If you want to have a relationship with my daughter, you will agree to family therapy with a neutral third party, and you will provide a full, transparent accounting of the trust and this list, with no hidden columns and no behavior scores, if you do not agree. Then Nora and I are gone, permanently. I turned to Dana. Let's go. We walked toward the door. My legs felt like lead. My heart was hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. Ruby, Elaine called after me. You walk out that door, and you are cutting yourself off. You will get nothing. I did not turn around. I pushed the door open and walked out into the cool, damp air of the parking lot. I made it to my car before my knees gave out. I leaned against the door, gasping for air. Dana was there instantly. Her hand on my shoulder. Breathe, she said. You did it. You were perfect. I feel like I'm dying. I whispered. That is the adrenaline. Dana said. It will pass. We stood there for a moment, the gray sky hanging low over us. Then the door of the community center opened. Martin came out. He was alone. He walked toward us slowly. He looked like an old man. He stopped 5 feet away. Ruby, he said. I said no contact. Dad, I said. I did not move away, but I did not step toward him. I know, he said. He reached into his jacket pocket. He pulled out a thick white envelope. It was sealed with tape. Take this, he said. What is it? I asked. Another bill? Another draft letter? No, Martin said. It is proofs. From 5 years ago. Proofs of what? Of the amendment, he said. The one she told you didn't exist. The one I wanted to sign. He held it out. His hand was shaking. I can't change what happened today, Martin said, and I can't stop her. You know I can't stop her. But I kept this. I don't know why. Maybe for this. I looked at the envelope. It had my name written on it in my father's blocky, all caps handwriting, underneath. He had written, For when you are ready, why are you giving me this now? I asked. Martin looked at the building, where Elaine was presumably still raging, because she went too far. He said, The letter. That was too far. I didn't know about the comments in the sidebar. I didn't know she was planning to leverage the trip. You should have known. I said, I know, Martin said. He looked at me, and his face was full of a terrible, heavy grief. I am a coward. Ruby, I have always been a coward, but I loved you. I still do. He placed the envelope on the hood of my car. Read it, he said. When you are ready, it explains the trust. He turned and walked away. He did not go back into the community center. He walked to his truck, got in, and drove away, leaving his wife alone in the meeting room. I stared at the envelope. What do you think is in there? Dana asked quietly. I picked it up. It felt heavy. It felt like a bomb. I don't know, I said, but whatever it is, I think it is the key to the cage. I got into the car. I placed the envelope on the passenger seat. I started the engine. Let's go home, I said, and for the first time in my life, I knew exactly where that was. It wasn't the house in Alder Creek. It was wherever Nora and I were safe. The 30 days of silence were not empty. They were full. They were full of the sounds that had been drowned out by the constant, low-frequency hum of my mother's expectations. They were full of the sound of rain against the library windows on Saturday mornings. They were full of the sound of eggs cracking into a ceramic bowl on Tuesdays. They were full of the sound of my daughter breathing as she slept. A rhythm that was no longer interrupted by my own anxious pacing in the hallway. We built a fortress out of the ordinary. I stopped checking my email after 6 in the evening. I put my phone in a drawer when I walked through the front door. I learned to look at Nora without searching her face for signs of damage, without wondering if she felt the absence of the family that had rejected her. And in that quiet, Nora bloomed. She stopped asking why Grandma hadn't called. She stopped asking if she could go to the big house in Alder Creek. It was as if she had sensed the toxicity instinctively, like an animal sensing a predator. And now that the danger was gone, she could simply be 7 years old again. We walked in the evenings. The Oregon twilight stays long and blue in the summer, even when it rains. We walked through our apartment complex, counting the puddles. Mom. Nora said one night, holding my hand, "I like it when it is just us. It is quiet. I like it too," I said, and I realized, with a jolt of guilt and relief, that I meant it. I was not lonely. I was free. But the envelope was still there. I had placed it on the top shelf of my closet, beneath a stack of winter sweaters. It sat there for 2 weeks. I knew I had to open it. But I also knew that once I did, the peace would be disturbed. The envelope was a portal back into the logic of the Butlers, and I was not ready to step through it until I felt solid enough to stand my ground. On the 15th day of the no-contact period, after Nora had gone to sleep, I pulled it down. I sat at my kitchen table with a letter opener. The house was silent. The refrigerator hummed. I slit the tape. Inside, there were 3 documents. They were photocopies, slightly grainy, as if they had been made in a hurry on an old machine. The first document was titled Second Amendment to the Butler Family Trust, dated 5 years ago. I began to read. Section 4. Educational Provisions. Upon the attainment of the age of 18, each grandchild of the grantors shall be entitled to a distribution of equal value, not to exceed $150,000, for the purpose of higher education, vocational training, or business capitalization, equal value, $150,000. It was a guaranteed disbursement. It was security. It was a promise that no matter what happened between the parents, the children would have a start in life. I turned the page. Stapled to the back was a second document, dated 6 months later. Third Amendment to the Butler Family Trust. Section 4 revised. Educational Provisions. All distributions for education or advancement shall be made at the sole discretion of the surviving grantor or the appointed trustee, subject to an annual review of the beneficiary's alignment with the family mission statement and code of conduct. The specific number was gone. The word equal was gone. In their place were the words sole discretion and alignment. I felt a coldness spread through my chest. They had stripped the safety net away. They had replaced a right with a reward. But it was the third item in the envelope that made me feel sick. It was a handwritten note on a piece of yellow legal pad paper. It was my father's handwriting, jagged and pressed hard into the page. Elaine says no to the equality clause. Says it gives them too much independence too soon. Says if they have the money guaranteed, we lose the ability to guide their choices. She wants the discretionary model. I told her it looks like control. She says it is parenting. I am tired of fighting her on this. I am going to sign the revision on Monday. God forgive me. I stared at the note. We lose the ability to guide their choices. That was it. That was the philosophy that ruled our lives. Money was not a gift. It was a leash. Independence was not a goal. It was a threat. My father had known it was wrong. He had written it down. He had asked God for forgiveness. But he had not asked his wife for compromise. He had signed. I put the papers down. I did not cry. I was past the point of tears. I felt a cold, hard resolve settling in my gut, displacing the fear that had lived there for so long. I needed a lawyer, not to sue them, but to understand exactly how deep the trap was. Leona Voss had an office in a glass building downtown, far away from the old money wood paneling of Alder Creek. She was a woman in her 60s with short, steel-gray hair and glasses that hung on a chain around her neck. She listened to me without interrupting. She read the documents. She read the spreadsheet I had printed from the cloud. She read the note from my father. She took off her glasses and rubbed the bridge of her nose. Well, Leona said, it is certainly ugly. But is it illegal? That is a harder question. They changed the trust. I said, they took away the guaranteed money. They are the grantors. Leona said, it is their money. Until they die. They can amend the trust as many times as they want. They can write a clause saying you only get the money if you wear a clown suit to dinner every Sunday. It is controlling, it is manipulative, and it is morally bankrupt. But it is within their rights. So there is nothing I can do? I asked. I didn't say that, Leona said. She tapped the spreadsheet. This list. The legacy reimbursement list. This is where they have exposed themselves. She pointed to the column labeled loans. Your father admitted to you that these were informal loans, Leona said. But did you sign a promissory note at the time the money was given? No. I said, I thought they were gifts, and on their tax returns. Leona continued, I would bet my license that they categorize these as gifts to take advantage of the annual exclusion limits. But internally, they are tracking them as debts to be repaid from the estate. You cannot have it both ways. Ruby, you cannot tell the IRS it is a gift and tell your heir it is a loan. So they are committing tax fraud? I asked. It is a gray area, Leona said, but it is a gray area that the IRS dislikes intensely. And more importantly, it is a breach of fiduciary duty if they are serving as trustees for any irrevocable portions of the estate. She leaned forward. Here is my advice, Leona said. Stop looking for a lawsuit. A lawsuit will take 5 years, cost you a fortune, and destroy whatever is left of the family. You will not win the money back. Then what do? I asked. You stop chasing punishment and you start protecting outcomes, Leona said. You use this. You use the fact that their record-keeping is sloppy and unethical. She pulled a notepad toward her. We draft a letter. She said, we formally document every transaction they have listed as a debt. We state clearly that these were received as gifts. Citing the lack of loan documentation, we create a paper trail that solidifies your position. If they ever try to deduct these amounts from your inheritance later, you will have the evidence to contest it then. But for now, you secure your perimeter. And the no contact? I asked. Keep it, Leona said. Boundaries are your best defense. They are used to you engaging in the drama. Silence terrifies people like your mother because they cannot manipulate what they cannot speak to. I left her office feeling lighter. I did not have a sword, but I had a shield, and for the first time, I understood the difference. 2 days later, the mail arrived. I brought the stack of envelopes inside. Most of it was junk mail, but one piece stood out. It was a postcard. On the front was a glossy, saturated photo of a sea turtle swimming in crystal clear blue water. Aloha from Maui was printed in yellow script. I turned it over. The handwriting was rounded and careful, written in blue marker. Dear Nora, Hawaii is so pretty. We saw a turtle just like this one. I miss you. I wish you were here to build sandcastles. Grandma says you are busy, but I hope you can come next time. Love, Leo, Chase's oldest son. I stood in the hallway, clutching the postcard. My throat tightened. Leo was 10. He didn't know about the spreadsheets. He didn't know about the compliance memos. He just knew his cousin wasn't there. Grandma says you are busy, even there, in paradise. My mother was spinning the web. She couldn't just say, we didn't invite her. She had to lie. She had to make it sound like we had chosen not to come, like we were too busy for family. Nora walked into the hall. She saw the picture. Is that for me? She asked. Her eyes lit up. I hesitated. Part of me wanted to hide it. I wanted to protect her from the reminder of what she was missing. But I looked at the innocent blue ink, the love in those 3 sentences. Yes, I said, it is from Leo. Nora took the postcard. She read it slowly. A smile spread across her face, genuine and bright. He saw a turtle, she said. Look, Mom, he misses me. She didn't hear the lie about us being busy. She only heard the love from her cousin. He does miss you, I said, stroking her hair. He loves you very much. Nora ran to the refrigerator. "Can we put it up?" she asked. "Of course," I said. She used a magnet to stick the postcard right in the center of the door. Every time I walked into the kitchen after that, I saw the turtle. It was a beautiful, painful reminder. The children were innocent. The rot stopped with the adults, and that meant it was my job to make sure the rot didn't jump the gap. I sat down that night and opened my laptop. I was not going to write to my parents. I was not going to break the no-contact rule with them, but I needed to speak to my siblings. I drafted a letter. I addressed it to Chase, his wife Chloe, and my sister Sarah. I CC'd Dana, because I wanted a witness. Chase, Sarah, I am writing this not to argue about the trip, but to set a record straight regarding our children. I know about the legacy reimbursement list. I know about the pressure to conform to Mom's financial and behavioral standards. I know that your choices to distance yourselves from me are likely driven by fear of losing your standing in the trust. I do not blame you for wanting to protect your financial future, but I am asking you, begging you, to keep the children out of it. Do not tell your sons that Nora is in a timeout. Do not tell them we are too busy to see them. Do not let Mom's narrative about good and bad branches of the family infect the next generation. Nora received a postcard from Leo today. It made her happy. Please, let them just be cousins. If you have to cut me out to keep the peace with Mom, fine, but do not punish Nora for my refusal to be controlled. Ruby. I hit send. I stared at the screen. It was the most honest thing I had said to my siblings in 10 years. I did not expect a reply. Chase was in Maui. He was likely at a luau, or on a boat, or sitting in a cabana listening to my mother talk about the importance of legacy. But late that night, my phone buzzed. It was not a text. It was a voice message on WhatsApp. It was from Chase. I pressed play. The audio was grainy, filled with the sound of wind and the distant crash of waves. He must have been outside, hiding. "Ruby?" Chase's voice said. He sounded exhausted. He sounded like he had been drinking. "I got your email. Look, I can't write back. She checks my phone sometimes. Or she asks to see the photos and just scrolls." He sighed. A long, shuddering breath. "I am sorry," he said. "I know that doesn't fix it, but I am sorry. You have to understand. Ruby, my business. Half my contracts come through Dad's network. If I piss her off, if I stand up for you," she whispers in Martin's ear, and suddenly the referrals stop. "I have a mortgage. I have 3 kids. I can't afford to be you." There was a pause. "Leo really does miss Nora," he said. His voice cracked. "I won't let them talk bad about her anymore. I promise. I told Chloe to shut it down if Mom starts in on the chaos speech. It's all I can do right now. Just don't give up on us. Please." The message ended. I sat in the dark. I can't afford to be you. It was an admission of total defeat. He was not a son. He was an employee. He was a hostage. My mother had purchased his loyalty with referrals and fear. I felt a wave of pity for him that was stronger than my anger. He was in paradise, and he was hiding in the dark to whisper an apology to his sister. The 30 days came to an end on a Tuesday. I had planned to send the email Leona and I had drafted. I had planned to set the terms for the future, but my mother beat me to it. At 9 in the morning, an email notification popped up. It was sent to the entire family. Chase, Sarah, me, and even Dana. Subject: Family Unity Dinner. Mandatory attendance. I opened it. Dear family, now that we have returned from a restorative trip, it is time to look forward. We will be hosting a family unity dinner this Sunday at 5 o'clock at the Briar Hall Country Club. The agenda will include a review of the family mission statement and important updates regarding the legacy planning structure for the coming fiscal year. Attendance is required for all adult beneficiaries who wish to remain active participants in the Butler Family Trust discussions. Please consider this a priority commitment. Love, Mom and Dad. It was a summons, required, beneficiaries, priority commitment. She was doubling down. She knew I had found the list. She knew I had walked out of the meeting at the community center. She knew I was dangerous. So she was moving the battlefield. She was taking it to the country club, to a public place where she felt powerful, and she was framing it as a choice: show up and bend the knee, or stay home and be cut off. I called Leona. "Don't go," Leona said. "It is a trap. She wants to undress you in public. If I don't go, she wins." I said, "If I don't go, she tells Chase and Sarah that I abandoned the family. She tells them I don't care about the legacy. She spins the story, and I am not there to correct it. If you go, you are playing her game." Leona warned. "No," I said, "I am going, but I am not going to eat dinner." I hung up. I looked at the calendar. I was done hiding. I was done with the no-contact silence. Silence was protective, yes, but at some point, protection looks like hiding. I was going to the Briar Hall Country Club. I was going to look her in the eye in front of her peers, in front of my siblings, in front of the waiters and the valets. I opened my closet. I pulled out the dress I had worn to my divorce hearing. It was black. It was armor. I texted Dana. She called a meeting. Dana replied instantly. "I saw it. I'm in." "You don't have to come," I typed. "You're out of the trust anyway." "I'm not coming for the trust," Dana wrote. "I'm coming for the show. Pick me up at 4:30. I looked at the turtle on the refrigerator. "I am doing this for you." "Nora," I whispered. "So you never have to wonder who fought for you." Briar Hall Country Club was the sort of place that sold silence as a luxury good. The driveway was a quarter-mile of crushed white gravel that hissed beneath the tires of my car. A sound that was meant to announce an arrival, but felt to me like the sharpening of a blade. The main building was a sprawling Tudor revival, draped in ivy that was trimmed with frantic precision, ensuring not a single leaf touched the window panes. I parked the car myself. I did not want the valet to have my keys. I wanted to know that if I needed to leave, I could leave in 10 seconds flat. Dana sat in the passenger seat, checking her makeup in the visor mirror. She was wearing a suit that looked like it was cut from steel wool, sharp and abrasive. "Ready?" she asked. "No," I said. "But let's go." We walked up the stone steps. The air was heavy with the scent of chemically treated lawns and jasmine. Inside, the foyer was cool and dim. The maitre d', a man named Arthur, who had known my parents for 30 years, smiled at me with a tightness around his eyes that suggested he knew exactly what kind of dinner this was going to be. "The butler party is in the oak room," Arthur said. "Mrs. Butler asked that we close the doors once everyone is seated." Of course she did. I said. We walked down the hallway. The carpet was thick enough to swallow our footsteps. I could hear the murmur of voices before we reached the double oak doors. I paused. I placed my hand on the brass handle. I felt the envelope in my purse, the one Martin had given me, and the folder Leona had helped me prepare. They were physical weights, anchoring me to the ground. I pushed the doors open. The conversation stopped instantly. The oak room was small, intimate, and suffocating. A long mahogany table was set for 12, though there were only 10 of us. The centerpiece was a low, sprawling arrangement of white orchids that looked like they were gasping for air. Elaine was at the head of the table. She wore a dress of pale, icy blue silk. She looked royal. She looked untouchable. Martin sat at the opposite end. He did not look up when I entered. He was staring at his bread plate, crumbling a roll into dust with his thumb. Chase and Chloe were there. Sarah and her husband, Mark, 2 of my aunts, and in the corner, holding a notebook, was Greg, the financial planner. "Ruby," Elaine said. She did not stand. She gestured to an empty chair near the foot of the table, far away from her, next to Greg. "We were just discussing the appetizers. You are late. It is 5 o'clock exactly," I said. I walked to the chair. Dana took the one beside me. "Hello, everyone," I said. There were mumbles of greeting. Chase gave me a quick, terrified nod, and then looked immediately at his water glass. Sarah offered a weak smile that vanished as soon as Elaine cleared her throat. "Well," Elaine said, clapping her hands together softly, "now that we are all here, we can begin. I have asked Arthur to hold service for 20 minutes so we can have this time to focus. She stood up. She picked up her wine glass, which was filled with sparkling water. I want to start with gratitude, Elaine said. Her voice was melodic, practiced. It was the voice she used when she was chairing a charity auction. This family has been through a busy year. We have had challenges. We have had changes. But the recent trip to Hawaii reminded Martin and me of something vital. She paused, making eye contact with Chase. Then Sarah. It reminded us that a family is like a garden. She continued, it requires pruning. It requires structure. You cannot simply let things grow wild and expect beauty. You have to cultivate the branches that are bearing fruit, and you have to support the ones that are struggling to find the sun. I felt Dana stiffen beside me. Pruning, she whispered under her breath. We are so proud of the cooperative branches of this family, Elaine said, smiling warmly at Chase. Chase, your commitment to the business and to the family reputation has been exemplary this quarter. And Sarah, the way you have managed your household budget this year aligns perfectly with the Butler vision. She turned her gaze to me. The warmth evaporated. Her eyes were flat and hard. And for those who are still finding their footing, she said, we want this dinner to be a reset, a chance to align with the stability that protects us all. We cannot afford chaos. The world is too harsh for that. We must present a united front. She raised her glass. To unity, she said, and to the legacy that rewards those who protect it. To unity. The room murmured. Chase drank. Sarah drank. Martin lifted his glass but did not drink. He just held it near his mouth like a shield. I did not touch my glass. I sat with my hands folded in my lap. Waiting. Elaine sat down. She looked satisfied. She nodded to Greg. Greg has prepared the fiscal updates, she said. But before he begins, does anyone have any thoughts they wish to share? It was a rhetorical question. She expected silence. She expected submission. I stood up. The movement was sudden enough that Arthur, who had been hovering by the door, took a step back. I have a question, I said. Elaine sighed. It was a sound of profound, weary patience. Ruby, can this not wait until dessert? We have an agenda. No, I said. It fits the agenda perfectly. I looked around the table. I looked at Chase, whose face was pale. I looked at Sarah. I looked at my aunts, who were studying the silverware. My question is for the trustees. I said, for Mom and Dad. I kept my voice low, steady. I did not sound like the hysterical daughter they wanted me to be. I sounded like a prosecutor. Has the inheritance category of any adult child at this table ever been changed based on their public agreement with Elaine's decisions? The room went absolutely still. The silence was not peaceful. It was a vacuum, sucking the oxygen out of the air. Elaine laughed. It was a brittle, sharp sound. What a ridiculous question. We don't categorize our children. We manage assets. That is not an answer. I said. I turned to my father. Dad. I said, Martin. Martin looked up. His eyes were red-rimmed. He looked at Elaine, who was glaring at him with a warning etched into every line of her face. Then he looked at me. Yes, Martin said. The word hung in the air. Chase dropped his fork. It clattered against the china. A loud, violent noise. Martin, Elaine hissed. Yes, Martin repeated. Louder this time. We did. We changed the distribution percentages for Chase in November. And for Sarah in January, why? I asked. Martin took a breath. He looked like a man stepping off a ledge. Because Chase agreed to the marketing plan, he said, and because Sarah agreed to send the girls to the private school Elaine selected. Sarah gasped. You said that was a scholarship fund. She said, her voice trembling, you said the school fees were a gift. They were in advance, Martin said wearily, tied to compliance. This is a gross simplification. Elaine snapped, slamming her hand on the table. We are guiding outcomes. That is what good parents do. We reward good choices. Is it? I asked. I reached into my bag. I pulled out the envelope Martin had given me. I pulled out the copies of the trust amendments. 5 years ago, I said, holding up the first document. The trust guaranteed equal education funding for every grandchild. $150,000. No strings attached. It was a right of birth. I let the paper fall onto the table. It slid across the mahogany surface towards Sarah. 6 months later, I said, holding up the second document. That was revoked. It was replaced with this. I read the clause aloud. At the sole discretion of the trustee, subject to alignment with the family mission. And here, I said, holding up the handwritten note from my father, is the reason why. I read the note. She says if they have the money guaranteed, we lose the ability to guide their choices. She says it looks like control. I looked at Chase. It isn't a reward system. Chase, I said, it is a capture system. They took away what was already yours so they could sell it back to you in exchange for your obedience. Chase picked up the paper. His hands were shaking so hard the paper rattled. He read the note. He read the dates. You told me the trust was fixed, Chase whispered. You told me the market dictated the changes. The market did dictate it, Elaine said, her voice cold and furious. The market of this family's reputation. Do you think you would be where you are without us? Without the connections? Without the safety net? It's not a safety net, I said. It is a cage. Elaine stood up again. She pointed a manicured finger at me. You are weaponizing paperwork, she shouted. You are taking standard estate planning drafts and twisting them to fit your paranoid narrative because you are jealous. You are jealous that your brother and sister have maintained their standing while you have failed. Am I? I asked. I looked at Chase. Chase, I said, tell them about the post. Chase looked up. He looked at his mother, for the first time in his life. The fear in his eyes was replaced by something else. Disgust. She wrote it. Chase said. His voice was quiet, but it carried— What? Sarah asked. The post, Chase said. The one about earned privileges. The one about the participation trophies. Mom wrote it. I did no such thing. Elaine said. I merely suggested— You sent me the text, Chase yelled. He pulled his phone out of his pocket and threw it onto the table. It landed next to the orchids. It is right there. You sent me the text and said if I didn't post it verbatim, you would review the loan on my house. The room gasped. You threatened his house? Chloe asked, her voice rising. You told us that loan was a gift. You said you wanted the boys to have a backyard. It was leverage, Chase said, putting his head in his hands. It was all leverage, to protect the family market image. That is what she called it. Elaine's face was white. She looked around the room, but she found no allies. The waiters were staring from the doorway. Greg was hurriedly packing his notebook into his briefcase. You are all ungrateful, Elaine spat. Every single one of you. We built this life for you. We sacrificed for you. You didn't sacrifice, Dana said. Dana stood up. She had been silent until now, watching the demolition with a grim satisfaction. You invested, Dana said. And now you are mad that the returns aren't paying out. Elaine sneered at her. Stay out of this. Dana, you don't even belong here. I belong here because I know how far back it goes. Dana said. She looked at me. Tell them. Dana, I said. Dana turned to the table. Before Ruby's divorce, she said. Elaine called me. She didn't call to ask how Ruby was doing. Dana continued. She called to ask me to intervene. She told me to tell Ruby that if she left her husband, it would impact the children's standing. I felt the blood drain from my face. The children? I asked. She said children? Plural? Yes, Dana said. This was before the miscarriage, before Nora. She was already planning to use your future children as collateral. She told me, if Ruby breaks this marriage, she breaks the line of credit for her offspring. I looked at my mother. I looked at the woman who had held me when I cried, who had bought Nora her first pair of shoes, who had hosted birthday parties and holiday dinners. It was all a lie. It was all a transaction. You monster, I whispered. Elaine straightened her spine. She smoothed the silk of her dress. She did not look like a monster. She looked like a CEO dealing with a hostile takeover. I am a realist, Elaine said, and you are a child who thinks the world is free. It is not free, Ruby. Stability costs money. Reputation costs discipline. If you want to walk away from that, fine, but do not expect to take the benefits with you. I looked at her. I felt a strange calm settle over me. The anger was gone. The fear was gone. There was only clarity. I don't want the benefits. I said. I picked up the folder Leona had prepared. I did not open it. I did not need to. I am not here to negotiate. I said, I am not here to ask for my share of the trust. I don't want it. I don't want your money. I don't want your house. I don't want your approval. I looked at Martin. But I am telling you this. I said, Nora is done. She will no longer participate in any gathering that is conditional. I said, she will not accept gifts that are ranked. She will not be part of a system where her worth is calculated on a spreadsheet. She is my daughter, not your asset. You will cut her off? Elaine asked, incredulous. You will deny her her heritage? I am saving her from it. I said, I turned to my siblings, Chase, Sarah. I said, I love you. I want you in Nora's life, but not like this. If you want to see us, you come to my house, you come without an agenda, and you come without her. I pointed at Elaine. Martin, I said. My father looked at me. He looked broken. He looked like a building that had finally collapsed after years of structural neglect. I am sorry. Ruby, Martin said. Sorry isn't enough. Dad, I said, fix it. Martin nodded slowly. He stood up. He looked at Elaine. I am calling the firm in the morning. Martin said. His voice was hoarse. What firm? Elaine asked sharply. The external auditors. Martin said. I am commissioning a full fiduciary review of the trust. Every transaction, every loan, every amendment. Elaine's eyes went wide. You wouldn't dare. That will open the books to the IRS. It will expose everything. Let it be exposed, Martin said. I am done keeping the secrets. Elaine, I am stepping down as trustee. I am asking the court to appoint an independent fiduciary to manage the estate until the review is complete. You are senile, Elaine said. You are weak. Maybe, Martin said. But I am the grantor, and I can still sign my name. He looked at me. Go. Ruby, take your daughter and go. Elaine stared at him. She looked at the table, where her family sat in ruins. Chase was crying. Sarah was holding Mark's hand, white-knuckled. Dana was watching with a cold, final judgment. Elaine grabbed her purse. She did not look at Martin. She looked at the room, at the walls, at the audience she had lost. You are making a mistake, she said. Her voice was shaking, not with sorrow, but with rage. You are choosing chaos. You think you can survive without the structure I built? You will tear each other apart. She looked at me one last time. You win. Ruby, she sneered. You burned it down. I hope you like the ashes. She turned and walked out. The sound of her heels clicking on the hardwood floor was a staccato rhythm of retreat. The door closed behind her. The room was silent. Chase looked up. Is she gone? He whispered. Yes, I said. She is gone. I looked at Martin. He sank back into his chair. He picked up the roll he had crumbled and let the dust fall through his fingers onto the pristine white tablecloth. I will fix the tax issue, Martin said to the room. I will pay the penalties. I will make sure the loans are forgiven legally. He looked at me. It won't make up for the time, he said, or the hurt. No, I said, it won't. I turned to Dana. Let's go, I said. We walked out of the oak room. We walked past the stunned maitre d'. We walked out into the evening air. The sun was setting. The sky was a bruised purple, streaked with gold. I took a deep breath. The air smelled of jasmine and exhaust fumes, but it tasted sweet. Well, Dana said, lighting a cigarette she had fished from her purse. That happened. It happened. I said. I looked at my phone. There was a text from the babysitter, a picture of Nora, asleep on the couch, clutching the postcard from Hawaii. I smiled. She chose stability or chaos. I said, I choose Nora. We got into the car. I drove away from Briar Hall, leaving the crushed white gravel behind. I did not look in the rearview mirror. I knew what was back there, a legacy of debt. I drove toward the city lights, toward the small, rented apartment where my daughter was sleeping, safe and unranked, in a room that belonged only to us. The weeks following the dinner at Briar Hall were not marked by noise, but by a heavy, shifting silence. It was the sound of a structure settling after the load-bearing walls had been removed. The family did not explode. It simply drifted apart. Like continents separating on a map, slow and inevitable, there were no more group texts. The Butler family news chat remained dormant. The last message, a picture of a sunset sent by an aunt 2 days before the dinner, now hovering there like a ghost of a happier time. The alliances formed in the quiet. My sister Sarah stopped calling me, but she also stopped posting about gratitude on social media. I heard through the grapevine that she was trying to remain neutral, terrified of losing her childcare help from Elaine, but equally terrified of being on the wrong side of history if the trust was dissolved. She was walking a tightrope, and I did not envy her balance. My aunts, Martin's sisters, sent me polite, distant birthday cards for Nora, signing them "Love Aunt June" with no personal note, signaling that they wished to be excluded from the narrative entirely. They chose the peace of the holidays over the truth of the ledger. I expected to feel triumphant. I had walked into the lion's den, exposed the trap, and walked out with my daughter. I had won. But I did not feel like a winner. I felt heavy. I felt a profound, aching grief that woke me up at 3 a.m. and sat on my chest until dawn. I sat in Dr. Aris's office 3 weeks after the dinner, staring at a generic watercolor painting of a sailboat on her wall. I should be happy, I said. I stopped them. I protected Nora. Why do I feel like I am the one who died? Doctor, Aris folded her hands in her lap. Because you did lose something. Ruby, you didn't lose your family. The family you have is still there, behaving exactly as they always have. You lost the fantasy. The fantasy? I asked. The fantasy that if you were just good enough, just quiet enough, just successful enough, they would eventually be fair, she said. You are mourning the parents you wanted, not the parents you have. You are grieving the hope that justice was a destination you could reach if you just followed the map. Now you know the map was rigged. That is a terrible loss. I cried then. I cried for the little girl who had tried so hard to be perfect, who had thought her chaos was a character flaw and not a label invented to control her. I cried for the years I had spent trying to earn a love that was being sold to the highest bidder. But while I grieved, Nora thrived. It was almost startling how quickly she bounced back, without the subtle pressure of the time out, without the confusing signals from her cousins. She expanded. One afternoon, I picked her up from school. She climbed into the car, her knees covered in grass stains. I joined the soccer game at recess, she announced. You did? I asked. I thought you said the boys wouldn't pass to you. They didn't, Nora said, shrugging. So I told them if they didn't pass, I was going to stand in the goal and not move, and then they passed. And I scored. She smiled. It was a fierce, proud smile. Grandma isn't going to be mad that I got my pants dirty, is she? She asked, a shadow crossing her face for a second. No, I said firmly. Grandma doesn't get a vote on your pants, or your soccer game, or anything else. Nora nodded, satisfied. The shadow vanished. Good, because I am going to do it again tomorrow. Her confidence was the proof I needed. My grief was the cost of her freedom. And looking at her grass-stained knees, I knew it was a bargain I would make 1,000 times over. Martin kept his word. It was the only thing he had left to offer. He hired a forensic accounting firm from Portland, strangers who did not care about the Butler reputation. They spent 6 weeks tearing through the trust's history. When the report came back, Martin asked me to meet him at a coffee shop in the city. He did not ask me to come to the office. He did not ask me to come to the house. He looked thinner. His suit hung loosely on his frame, and his hands had a tremor I had not noticed before. He slid a thick, bound document across the small table. "Read the executive summary," he said. I opened it. The language was dry, clinical, and devastating. Finding 4. The classification of intrafamily loans lacks consistent documentation. Significant sums distributed to beneficiary C, Chase, were categorized as business development investments, with 0 repayment terms, while smaller sums distributed to beneficiary R, Ruby, were categorized as high-risk personal advances, carrying compounded interest penalties tracked internally, but not reported to the IRS. Finding 7. The compliance memo system utilized by Trustee E, Elaine, to determine discretionary quarterly bonuses has no basis in the legal language of the trust and constitutes a potential breach of fiduciary duty by introducing arbitrary, non-financial metrics into financial governance. It wasn't illegal, Martin said quietly. Not technically. The lawyers say because the trust is discretionary. She has the right to be arbitrary. She can give $1 million to a cat if she wants, as long as the taxes are paid. But it was unethical, I said. And it was cruel. Yes, Martin said. It was coercive. That is the word they used in the private notes. Coercive control. He looked out the window at the passing traffic. I am stepping down, he said. The lawyers are drafting the paperwork. I am appointing an independent corporate trustee to manage the distributions from now on. No more rewards, no more lists. You will get your quarterly distribution based on the math. Ruby, not your behavior. And Mom? I asked. Does she agree to this? Martin laughed, a dry, humorless sound. She is furious. She says I have destroyed the family leverage. She says I have handed the inmates the keys to the asylum. She hasn't called me, I said. She won't, Martin said. She is waiting for you to come crawling back. She is convinced that once you realize you are cut off from the inner circle, you will apologize. She is going to be waiting a long time, I said. Martin reached across the table. He hesitated, then pulled his hand back. I am sorry I let it happen, he said. I know that doesn't fix it, but I am. Thank you for the report. Dad, I said. I took the document. It was heavy. It was the proof I had needed for years. I was not crazy. I was not bad. I was just the one who had refused to be bought. 3 days later, the letter arrived. It was on heavy, cream-colored stationery with my mother's monogram embossed in gold at the top. It was sent via certified mail, requiring a signature. I sat on my porch steps and opened it. Dear Ruby, reflecting on the events of last month, it is clear that emotions ran high and resulted in unfortunate misunderstandings regarding the family's governance strategies. Your father's decision to involve outsiders in our private affairs has created a vulnerability that we must now manage. However, in the spirit of preserving the family image, I am willing to offer a path forward. We have a vacancy for the Labor Day gathering at the lake house. I am prepared to offer you and Nora a probationary re-inclusion in the family travel schedule for the remainder of the year. Condition of acceptance. You will sign the enclosed non-disparagement agreement, confirming that you will not discuss family financial matters with third parties, extended relatives, or community members. You will also acknowledge in writing that previous financial classifications were misinterpreted due to a lack of context. This is a generous offer. Ruby, I suggest you take it. Stability is a privilege, not a right. Elaine, I read it twice. I laughed. It was absurd. Even in defeat, even with her authority stripped by the auditors, she was trying to negotiate a surrender where she still held the crown, probationary re-inclusion, as if I were a delinquent employee, as if my daughter were a conditional invitee. She wanted me to sign a lie. She wanted me to say I had misinterpreted the abuse so that she could sleep at night feeling like a benevolent matriarch. I did not burn the letter. I did not tear it up. I walked into my office. I scanned it. I saved it in the folder titled The List. Then I took a piece of plain white printer paper, I wrote one sentence. No, I put it in an envelope. I addressed it to the house in Alder Creek. I put a stamp on it. I dropped it in the mailbox on my way to the grocery store. I did not feel fear. I felt a quiet, absolute finality. The door was closed, and I had locked it from the inside. The real surprise came a week later. It was a Tuesday evening. I was in the kitchen making spaghetti. The doorbell rang. I wiped my hands on a towel and walked to the door. I checked the peephole. It was Chase. He was wearing jeans and a t-shirt, not the polo shirts and khakis he usually wore to signal his stability. He looked tired. He had a 6-pack of beer in one hand and a toy dinosaur in the other. I opened the door. "Hey," he said. "Hey," I said. I stood in the doorway, blocking the entrance. "I told you, Chase, no conditional visits." "It's not conditional," Chase said. "Mom doesn't know I'm here, and if she did, she would probably fire me, except she can't, because I quit." I stared at him. "You what?" "I quit," Chase said. "I resigned from Butler Restoration Group this morning. Gave my 2 weeks' notice." I stepped back. "Come in." Chase walked into the living room. He handed the dinosaur to Nora, who was watching from the couch. "For the collection," he said. "Thanks, Uncle Chase," Nora said, eyeing him warily. We went out onto the back patio. Chase opened 2 beers and handed one to me. He sat down on the plastic lawn chair and exhaled a long, shuddering breath. "I couldn't do it anymore," he said. "After the dinner, seeing the report, seeing the way she looked at you, I realized I was next. The moment I stepped out of line, the moment I made a mistake, she would turn that list on me. She would turn it on my boys." "So you left the family business?" I asked. "Chase, that is your whole life." "I know," he said. "I am terrified. I have no idea what I'm going to do. Chloe is freaking out about the mortgage, but I talked to a guy in Portland, a custom furniture builder. He likes my work. It is half the money, but..." He took a sip of beer. "But I don't have to post anything on Facebook to keep my job," he said. He looked at me. His eyes were wet. "I am sorry, Ruby," he said. "For the post, for the silence, for everything. I was a coward. I was so scared of losing the rewards that I didn't realize I was losing my self-respect." "It is okay," I said, and I meant it. "You are out now." "Yeah," Chase said. "I am out. And you know what? It feels quiet, in a good way." "Welcome to the chaos," I said, clinking my bottle against his. "It is better than the stability," he said. July arrived, hot and dry, in the past. July meant the grandparents' gratitude trip. It meant itineraries, dress codes, and photo shoots, where we all wore matching white linen. This year, there was no trip. The villa in Maui had been canceled by the independent trustee as an unnecessary expenditure. Instead, I sent an email. I sent it to Chase, to Sarah, to Dana, and to 3 of my cousins on my father's side who had been quietly supportive. Subject: Cousin's Day. Where? Fern Ridge Lake, North Shore Park. When? Saturday, July 15th. Agenda: swimming, hot dogs, watermelon. Rules: no parents allowed, except us. No speeches, no hierarchy, just cousins. I did not know who would come, but on Saturday morning, the cars started pulling into the gravel lot. Chase came with Chloe and their 3 boys. The boys ran out of the car, holding inflatable tubes, screaming with joy. Dana came with her partner, carrying a cooler full of unauthorized sodas, and then a minivan pulled up. It was Sarah. She got out slowly. She looked nervous. She was wearing shorts and a t-shirt, looking unpolished and real. Her 3 girls tumbled out of the back. Sarah walked over to me. I was standing by the grill, flipping burgers. "Hi," she said. "Hi," I said. "Mom is furious about this," Sarah said quietly. "She calls it a mutiny picnic." I laughed. "The hot dogs are rebellious." Sarah smiled. It was a small, tentative crack in the armor. "Mark couldn't come. He is still worried, but I wanted the girls to see Nora." I am glad you are here, I said. I looked toward the water. Nora was standing at the edge of the lake. Leo ran up to her. He was holding a water gun. He said something, and Nora threw her head back and laughed. Then she grabbed a bucket and splashed him. Chase's other sons joined in. Sarah's girls ran into the water. There were no posed photos. There were no matching outfits. There was screaming and splashing, and the smell of charcoal and sunscreen. It was messy. It was loud. It was ordinary. I stood there, watching my daughter play in a lake that cost nothing to enter, surrounded by family who were there simply because they wanted to be. I felt a hand on my shoulder. It was Dana. "Look at them," she said. "They have no idea they are supposed to be competing." "Let's keep it that way," I said. Late that night, after the sunburns had been treated and the tired children had been put to bed, my phone pinged. It was an email from Dana. Subject: FW, the future. Attachment: Butler_family_charter_draft_v1.pdf. I opened it. It was not a legal document. It was a proposal. Dana had drafted it, with input from Chase and, surprisingly, Sarah. The Butler Family Charter. Article 1. Transparency. All financial gifts, trusts, and assistance provided to family members shall be disclosed openly to prevent leverage and manipulation. Article 2. Equality. No grandchild shall be ranked, scored, or rewarded based on parental compliance. Educational support, if available, shall be distributed equally. Article 3. Direct communication. Triangular communication, speaking through third parties, is discouraged. Conflict shall be resolved between the parties involved, not through social leverage. Article 4. Freedom of association. Attendance at family events is voluntary and shall never be tied to financial standing. I read the document. It was imperfect. It was idealistic. It was just a piece of paper. But it was a start. It was a declaration that the next generation would not live by the ledger. It was a promise that we would break the cycle, even if we had to break the family to do it. I typed a reply. I'm in. I closed my laptop. I walked into Nora's room. She was asleep, her hair damp from the bath, her face relaxed in the moonlight. The postcard from Maui was still on her dresser, but it was buried under a pile of rocks and shells she had collected at the lake today. I touched her cheek. "You are free," I whispered. I walked to the window and looked out at the dark street. I thought of my parents in their big silent house in Alder Creek, surrounded by their perfect furniture and their empty guest rooms, guarding a legacy that no one wanted. They had chosen their stability. We had chosen our chaos, and looking at the moon rising over the trees, listening to the quiet rhythm of my daughter's breathing, I knew that our chaos was the only thing that was real. The list was closed, the debt was paid, and for the first time in 32 years, the balance was zero. Thank you so much for listening to My Parents Announced They're Taking All the Grandkids to Hawaii, except mine. I hope Ruby's journey resonated with you. It is a story about the hidden costs of conditional love and the courage it takes to walk away from the only system you have ever known. I would love to hear from you. Please leave a comment below telling me where you are listening from. I am always amazed to see how far these stories travel. If you enjoyed this series, please make sure to subscribe to the Revenge Stories channel so you never miss an episode. And finally, I want to know your thoughts. Do you think Ruby made the right choice by maintaining the boundary, even when her mother offered a truce? Or would you have tried to make peace? Share your thoughts in the comments in English. Until next time, take care of yourselves. And remember, sometimes the best revenge is simply being happy without them.